It's been almost 5 years since the
totally epic
finale of Game of Thrones, and I, like many, am still in recovery. The cracks in the story started to form as early as Season 5, but if Season 5 is where the show kinda went off the rails, then Season 8 is where the show kinda went straight off a cliff and into a nuclear reactor.
While Danny kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet and...
In the nicest possible way, fuck you.
To say that the writers shit the bed would be a massive understatement. I have never seen a fictional universe and its characters so thoroughly tarnished. And believe me, I've seen other writers try. Now, I love to complain about awful writing, easily my favorite pastime, but there is no shortage of videos on the interwebs roasting the later seasons of this show. You know what there is a shortage of? Any praise or discussion of the earlier seasons, which is a total shame because the earlier seasons are fantastic and they deserve to be praised just as much as the later seasons deserve to be dunked on. So today, we're not going to talk about the bells or, God forbid, the hour-long night. We're going to talk about back when this show slapped. Today, we're going to talk about Blackwater.
Drums!
Before we continue, there's a few fun facts I'd like to share with you all. Firstly, the Game of Thrones was originally a book, and it was written by this goober, George R.R. Martin. He not only wrote the books the show is based on, but he also wrote 4 of the show's episodes, one of them being Blackwater. This is also one of the only 3 episodes of the entire show that takes place in a single location, and it demonstrates the show's ability to keep you interested even when it isn't showing you the usual 6+ locations per episode. Another thing to note is that this battle, despite being the biggest spectacle in the show at the time, is significantly scaled down from what it was in the books. That being said, it still carries just as big of an impact because the stakes are just as high and all the significant beats still occur. With that out of the way, we can get into the meat of the episode. We open on Stannis' fleet approaching King's Landing and get some conversation between Davos and his son. Mathos is so unreasonably confident and Lord of Light-pilled that he expects the city he's about to invade to literally throw open the gates and welcome him with open arms. But Daddy Davos knows better.
The men guarding the walls, when they see you, they don't see a liberator. They see a stranger come to set their city on fire.
The young zealot isn't completely delusional though. A fair bit of his confidence is warranted, as he reminds his father and the audience that their ships outnumber the Lannisters 10-1 and their soldiers outnumber them 5-1. And hey, not bad, but raw numbers are not enough to storm a castle. One should never underestimate the advantages of a good wall.
I will build a great wall, and I will have
the wildlings
pay for that wall.
Ha ha ha. There he is, the star of the show, Lord Peter Dinklage himself. In stark contrast to his book counterpart, Show Tyrion is arguably one of the most morally upright characters in the entire show. This makes him less interesting, but definitely more likable. I don't think anyone in the audience would mind seeing the Lannisters knocked off the throne, but no one wanted to see Tyrion fail here. After seeing Ned fumble the ball in Season 1, it's immensely satisfying to see the half-man step up and show everybody how it's done. He immediately sniffs out Pycelle as his sister's informant. He removes Janos Slynt and installs Bronn as commander of the City Watch. He secures a spy in Lancel and an ally in Varys. And lastly, he tracks down and commandeers his sister's wildfire stash. He also does this.
You can't insult me!
Uncle of the Year. It's all on the line now. If Stannis wins, it's game over. Tyrion is afraid because he'd be an idiot not to be, and thankfully, he's no idiot, and I'm sure that will never change. We then cut to a cute little Cersei and Pycelle scene where not much of note happens, other than Pycelle giving her poison, and it being heavily implied that Cersei will probably kill herself well before Stannis gets his hands on her. Relax, Pycelle. It's just Cersei doing Cersei things. You know how she is. Meanwhile, the Lannister lads are having themselves just a merry old time, singing what is basically their anthem. This is the first time we hear the Rains of Castamere sung, but the first time we hear the tune is actually Tyrion whistling it earlier this season. Twice. We get a bit about Bronn and his rough upbringing in Flea Bottom. Violence has been part of this man's life since he was a child, but all things considered, he seems very well adjusted. In walks the Hound, vibe-checking the entire room. The polarity between these two could not be more apparent. Sociable, friendly, and charming versus cold, hateful, and intimidating. It's made obvious the Hound has a bone to pick with the Bronn, but it's a bit less obvious why.
Why are you always so hateful?
You know, I don't have to explain myself to you.
The first thing the Hound says is,
think you're a hard man.
And Bronn replies,
Oh, I know it.
The Hound casually reminds Bronn that the two of them are both lady killers, and not in the good way. He goes on to say that Bronn just acts like a friendly neighborhood sellsword, when really, he's a cold and calculated killer, just like himself. He throws some shade, and Bronn tosses it right back. The Hound stands and threatens to kill him. That escalated quickly. This interaction lasts all but 3 minutes, and there's a surprising amount to chew on. To fully explain, we need to dive a bit into Sandor's backstory. When Sandor was a wee lad, his older brother caught him playing with one of his toys, and well, his older brother is the Mountain, Sir Gregor Clegane, and even as a boy, he was large and violent, already earning a reputation. When he caught Sandor, he shoved his face into a fireplace and held it there as he screamed, his face melting. This would fuck up anybody, but worst of all, their father covered it up to protect Gregor. Gregor went on to become even more of a monster and was eventually knighted by Rhaegar Targaryen. The world of Westeros is filled with songs and histories of noble knights, paragons of virtue who defend their lords and ladies, heroes of the innocent and protectors of the weak. But to Sandor, someone who has had front row seats to the horrific evil done by knights and their lords, this is all just pageantry hiding unrelenting barbarism. Despite Sandor's supposed infatuation with brutality, he is disgusted by the cruelty of his knighted brother, so much so that he never wanted to become a knight himself. I believe what irks the Hound so much about Bronn is that he gets all the benefits of being a ruthless murderer while claiming none of the baggage. Either Bronn's companions are unaware of all the blood on his hands, or they choose to ignore it. But Sandor makes his killer status impossible to ignore. He wears his murderous intent on his sleeve, and he happily reminds everyone present that
children, animals, old people, doesn't matter. I just love killing.
To be fair, we don't see Bronn kill any kids, but when directly asked if he'd kill a baby, he says this.
Without question, no. I'd ask how much.
The key difference is the Hound is stewing with internal conflict. Unlike Bronn, Sandor hates himself for what he's done. B-Boy kills people for coin and is perfectly content. Mr. H kills people in service of his king and is swimming in self-hatred. He thinks Bronn should be every bit as miserable and unloved as he is, but he's not. The glorious irony here is that the Hound gets annoyed with Bronn because he sees his outward behavior as a lie about who he really is. But if either of them is being genuine about who they are, it's Bronn. Bronn just isn't bothered by the shit he's done. Clegane is clearly tortured by it, and takes every opportunity he can to lie to himself and others about how he feels. This is what the kids call cope. He claims to be nothing more than Joffrey's dog, but he goes out of his way to protect the innocent several times. And in the end, I think the Hound recognizes that Bronn isn't putting on a front. This is exactly who he is. Bronn never rolls over for him, nor does he deny being a killer, because he's never denied that, nor has he shown any shame for it.
You're an up-jumped cutthroat. Nothing more.
That's exactly who I am.
He even squares up to the Hound after being threatened, proving himself the real deal. The bells start to ring, and while some of the tension is lifted, Bronn keeps his hand on his knife as he offers the Hound one more drink. This time, the Hound accepts, demonstrating that Bronn has earned at least a shred of his respect. This is one of the best scenes in the episode, and shockingly, it wasn't in the script, it wasn't in the books, and George did not write it. These two did, which does explain the pointless nudity.
I have a feeling that girl will not be clothed for long.
2 seconds later.
Yeah, I got that right.
They may deserve a real-life walk of shame for what they wrote in Season 8, but this is one of several great additions they made to the story, back when they still gave a shit. We cut back to our boy Tyrion being prepped for battle, and hot damn, his fit is impeccable. I love his little fucking hand necklace. Varys asks Pod's name, and Tyrion's all like,
if you don't know the name of every boy in town.
Being a eunuch from across the sea leaves Varys prone to all sorts of Westerosi discrimination, even at his level of influence. I mean, the rumors aren't entirely unfounded, as Varys does employ children and use them as spies throughout the city and castle, but this is something that spy masters have been doing for centuries. I remember when I first watched, wondering if it was just a rumor or if Varys was simply hiding his more insidious side from the audience. We now know he never was, and this comes off as pretty true to life. Political figures get all kinds of baseless slander thrown at them, and Varys is probably aware that denying this kind of bullshit only serves to lend it more credibility in the eyes of his accusers. This also serves to remind us that Tyrion, despite his alliance with Varys, doesn't entirely trust him. Unlike Ned, who didn't understand the politics of the Red Keep and put way too much faith in Littlefinger, Tyrion is keeping his allies at an arm's distance. Varys has been made aware of the Red Priestess serving Stannis and mentions this to the Dink. Tyrion is all like, magic isn't real, why the fuck would I care? And Varys basically says, dude, I've seen some shit, alluding to the sorcerer who mutilated him as a boy and sacrificed his penis to some dark spirit. He says that Stannis has amassed his armies through the use of dark magic, meaning he's aware of the Shadow Baby. And like the rest of us, Varys thinks the Shadow Baby, and by extension Renly's death, was fucking bullshit. Base take Varys, keep him coming. It's not uncommon for the king's servants to stick around after the rival king has claimed the throne, but the Red Woman would have Varys and probably most of the nobility in the Red Keep burned alive if she got the chance, and Varys knows this. We learn who he is in the first season. He's the one guy who actually has the realm's best interests at heart, and he knows how to get results. Varys would never let himself be benetted because he understands that the power he has to effect positive change ends when he dies. He practically begs Ned to give a false confession for this same reason. It's why he tries to give Tyrion a map to the city's escape tunnels in this scene. He definitely plans on using the tunnels himself, but he sees a rare type of ally in Tyrion and would like him to escape as well. But the imp has resolved to go down with the ship. Pod hands him his axe, and it's time to go to war. Just kidding, it's time for another side tangent. To really hammer home how good the coming explosion is, I'm gonna compare it to the other wildfire explosion. Cersei's big boom, if you will. Let's discuss. Both are visually stunning, both are built up to in a slow, captivating, and suspenseful way. This one does have superior music. Plus, Tommen's suicide is a surprisingly potent cherry on top, but only one of them makes any sense within the narrative. Guess which one that is? To understand why this is so egregious, one only needs to look at who Cersei's big boom has killed, and keep in mind that she suffers absolutely zero consequences. I left it somewhere. Oh, here it is. Let's read off this kill list, shall we? The High Sparrow, the Faith Militant, and hundreds of bystanders, all who represent one of the biggest religious movements that King's Landing has ever seen. Marjorie, Loras, and Mace Tyrell, three of the most powerful members of House Tyrell. You know, House Tyrell, the Lannisters' richest and most powerful ally. Cersei's own uncle, Kevin Lannister, who has led the Lannister forces since Tywin's death. And to top it all off, she would obviously be accused of murdering Tommen, since she just did a terrorism, and takes the throne the same day her son supposedly kills himself. Shouldn't her own house, arguably the one she's doing the most damage to, be turning on her? By all accounts, she just killed the leaders of one of the strongest, most popular houses alive, and usurped the king. Where is the angry mob at the gate demanding this homicidal kinslaying maniac not be made the first queen in Westerosi history? Where the fuck is the Tyrell army? Weren't they just here? This isn't treated like an actual explosion. This is the writers Thanos snapping characters and entire armies out of the story because they can't be fucking bothered. Tyrion faces more consequences for successfully saving the city than Cersei does for literally fucking nuking it. Fuck season 6. Point made, case closed, let's get back to the good shit. Mathis hears the siege bells and says,
"They're welcoming the new king."
Dude, were you not listening?
When they see you, they don't see a liberator. They see a stranger come to set their city on fire.
Joffrey summons Sansa to see him off, and once again, I have to say, the drip, the kingly drip. He shows her his fancy new sword and makes her kiss it. She does a bit of trolling and he's like, "Just wait till I get my hands on your treasonous brother." And then he dips. Just moments after confidently striding through the Red Keep, Joffrey is visibly nerve-wracked by the atmosphere of the battlements. He's never experienced true combat before, and it shows. He gets even more nervous when he notices his royal fleet is suspiciously absent from the harbor. The war drums from Stannis' fleet begin to echo across the bay like rolling thunder. Mathis also notices the absence of ships and says, "Yo, we caught them with their pants down." His father retorts that Varys knows what he had for breakfast 3 days ago. There are no surprises here. Pat then says, "Yo, maybe the sailors mutinied." Get over it, dude. King's Landing isn't gonna just spread its legs for you. We get this tiny little shot of the Hound flinching away from a torch. It's a subtle reminder of his phobia before it becomes very relevant to the plot later. The war drums work beautifully to build up suspense. Like the bells from the city, they linger in the background of every scene once they start up. Joffrey begins to panic as the Lannister fleet finally shows up in the form of a single ship. The drumming grows louder and more intense, like a racing heartbeat, as everyone waits with bated breath to see what the half-man has up his sleeve. Davos nears the mysterious little sloop. The drumming finally ceases, and he prepares to fire on it before noticing it's completely empty. Mathis seems interested in keeping an eye on the deck, maybe hoping Jesus is on board and he's here to bless the attack. Davos stays where he is, trying to get a look at the back of the ship. He sees a green substance pouring from the hull and instantly realizes what's up, shouting at his men to steer away, but it's too late.
Mathis! Get down!
It's so perfect. The way the music cuts as Bronn looses his arrow. The sound design is just, oh, so good. But seriously, listen to how it just rips through the air. The pyromancer doesn't say a word, but you get some great bits of characterization for him. He's so excited when he hands Tyrion the torch to give the signal. Most people look away from the fire because it's so damn bright, but he gazes at it lustfully. This is probably the biggest wildfire explosion he's ever concocted, and he looks so damn proud. Joffrey is all about the big explosion, murderous little scamp. The Hound, on the other hand, is mortified, probably because he saw Mathos get disintegrated. Now let's talk about Mathos's demise, which is made all the more tragic because he was standing in a safer spot moments before the explosion, which I think was no mere accident. I know, but I have evidence. But first, a word from Mathis.
You always came home. I wasn't praying. No, but I was. Every night that you were at sea, I lit a candle and I prayed for you.
He prayed his dad would be safe, and when that seemed to work, he ran with it, and he didn't bother looking elsewhere for answers. He fixates on the empty deck of the ship because he's probably expecting men to be emerging at any moment. Understandable, but by comparison, Davos stays where he is to get a better look at the whole ship, to better understand the entire situation. This difference between their perspectives has put figurative and now literal distance between them, and it gets Mathis killed. Or he saw titties on the prow of the ship and he wanted to get a better look. I could be wrong. Tyrion doesn't know it yet, but this desperate gambit proves to be the difference between victory and defeat, even if he doesn't reap the rewards for it. This explosion has been built up to for almost half a season, and for a magical green explosion, it's very grounded and very realistic. Unlike Cersei's big boom, this functions like an actual bomb. It scares the fuck out of the enemies, it knocks out a sizable chunk of their forces, it clutters their path, and that's it. Stannis watches the fire die down and pushes on, determined to take the throne, regardless of this most major of setbacks. While the battle rages on outside, the noble ladies hole up in Maegor's Holdfast, the innermost part of the Red Keep. Cersei calls Sansa over, has her drink some wine, and then asks why Sir Ilyn Payne is there. Ilyn is the King's Justice, aka the Royal Executioner. Yeah, that motherfucker. Sir Ilyn isn't the most chatty of chaps at court, and hasn't been since the days of Aerys Targaryen, better known as the Mad King. At the time, Sir Ilyn was Tywin's captain of the guard, and Tywin was serving as Hand of the King. Sir Ilyn dared to suggest that Tywin was the true ruler of Westeros instead of Aerys, and for that his tongue was cut out. Shortly after this little prick gets crowned, we witness a repeat of history. A musician gets caught singing a ditty poking fun at Joffrey's mother and recently deceased, not father. He's brought before the bastard king and given a choice between keeping his hands or his tongue. When the minstrel chooses to keep his hands, Joffrey says,
Sir Ilyn, who better than you to carry out the sentence? I beg you!
It's like poetry, they rhyme. Ilyn's actor, Wilco Johnson, was himself a singer and a talented musician, so there's like 4 layers of irony here. Ilyn might be the only person at court literally incapable of spreading secrets, and it's for this reason Jaime uses him as a mentor when he loses his sword hand. Johnson was fighting pancreatic cancer at the time of filming, so this is his only appearance in season 2 and his final appearance in the show. He has a very minor part in the books anyway, so the writers phased him out and gave his role as Jaime's secret mentor to Bronn. Also, I know they have the same last name, but a lot of people either forget or never put it together. Ilyn Payne is the distant cousin of Tyrion's squire, Podrick Payne. Fun facts aside, it is weird for him to be here, especially posted up like this. Cersei says, "Oh, don't worry, he's here to protect us. Can't you tell by looking at him?" A wildfire explosion happens, and when we cut back, Cersei sees Sansa in a little friendship circle and wants to know what she's up to.
Praying. You're perfect, aren't you? Sipped. Drink. Not like that. Drink, girl.
Lyanna Headey and Sophie Turner both give great performances throughout.
If the city falls, these fine women should be in for a bit of a rape. When a man's blood is up, anything with tits looks good.
There's some classic jealousy and wicked stepmotherisms going on here, but these two are both delightfully complicated characters, and their relationship is even more so.
Why are you always so hateful?
Shut up, you little fool.
A cornerstone of her character isn't revealed to us till Season 5, Episode 1. A young Cersei visits a witch named Maggie and demands that she reveals her future. The witch agrees to answer 3 questions, but tries to warn her that she will not like the answers. First, she asks if she will marry the prince. She's referring to Rhaegar Targaryen, who at this time is slated to be the future king, and her future husband.
You'll never wed the prince. You'll wed the king.
But I will be queen.
Seems like a waste of a question, since she just told you would be marrying the king. But I guess the witch is feeling generous, because rather than just saying, yep, lol, she says, yes, you will be, but only temporarily, until someone younger and more beautiful comes along, to cast you down and take all you hold dear. Lastly, she asks if she will have children with the king. She is told no, the king will have 20 and you will have 3. Gold will be their crowns, gold their shrouds. Maggie's prophecy being spot on so far does not bode well for her, and it drives much of her paranoia throughout the story. The Stark girl, innocent as she seems, is currently a candidate for the queen destined to supplant her and take all of her shit. Suspicion, resentment, and hatred are all there, but there also seems to be a non-zero amount of empathy. Like Sansa, Cersei would go on to have every childhood dream she ever had completely shattered. The Queen Regent sees some of her younger self in the girl and is likely both touched and repulsed by her innocence. She even goes on to give her genuine advice later.
The more people you love, the weaker you are. You'll do things for them that you know you shouldn't do. You'll act the fool to make them happy, to keep them safe. Love no one but your children. On that front, a mother has no choice.
Shouldn't I love Joffrey, Your Grace?
You can try, little dove.
And we find out later just how sincere that advice was.
You want to make things better for Sansa? Give her a child.
So you can tell
So
Father.
she can have some happiness in her life.
You have children. How happy would you say you are?
Not very. But if it weren't for my children, I'd have thrown myself from the highest window in the Red Keep.
During this scene, though, she gives Sansa some less ladylike advice.
Tears aren't a woman's only weapon. The best one's between your legs. Learn how to use it.
This is the most mask-off she's ever been with Sansa. She takes joy in educating and shocking her. Forcing the princess to drink is basically this entire interaction in microcosm. She's trying to tear down some of that pesky innocence, partially for Sansa's sake, but mostly for her own satisfaction. Stannis' troops rock up and Joffrey's all like,
Oh man, oh jeez, oh.
The Hound rallies his men and prepares to meet them, but not before reminding the archers to keep flaming arrows well away from him. The Lannister forces rain fire on the enemy as they push towards the wall. Stannis leads the charge, and I'm not gonna lie, this is pretty silly. He doesn't even wear a helmet, and the show teases you with how unbelievably dangerous this is. He's literally the first one up the wall and somehow escapes completely unharmed. This wasn't originally in the script, but the director added it to emphasize the difference in courage and leadership levels between Stannis and Joffrey. That's all well and good, but this definitely isn't the best way of doing that. He orders his men to assault the Mudgate, and the Lannister forces come out to meet them. Lancel and the Hound are also not wearing helmets, which is unfortunate because the Hound has a dope-ass helmet. In the books, even Joffrey is wearing a helmet. He keeps pulling the visor up to speak, and Tyrion keeps shutting it to keep him safe from stray arrows. I'm not joking, kids. Anytime you get on a bike or charge headlong into enemy forces, please, for the love of God, wear a fucking helmet. Aside from that, the clash that follows is great, and what they achieved with the limited budget is impressive.
Any man dies with a clean sword, I'll rape his fucking corpse!
Lancel gets hit by an arrow and retreats inside. We pop back inside, and a tipsy Cersei is complaining about her childhood to her teenage hostage. She displays some more penis envy, lamenting that when she was a girl, she could never understand why her and Jaime were treated so differently.
He was heir to Castle Rock, and I was sold to some stranger like a horse to be ridden whenever he desired.
You were Robert's queen.
And you will be Joffrey's. Enjoy.
God, she's such a cunt. I love her. Cersei complaining about the patriarchy in Westeros is all well and good if one can ignore her own horrible mistreatment of women. Tommen has opted to sleep instead of listening to his mother's drunken ramblings. Mood. Lancel comes in and tells Cersei things aren't going so well outside. She demands Joffrey be taken back to the safety of his chambers and sits back down. She reveals to Sansa why Ilyn is really there.
He's here for us. Stannis may take the city, he may take the throne, but he will not take us alive.
She has no intention of being brutalized, and she would be more than happy to cuck Sansa out of being rescued.
If I can't have you, no one can!
These Cersei and Sansa scenes, aside from being great fun, have finally answered the age-old question. What do les women and les children do during les battle? Plenty of fantasy battles will show the women and children, but they never get to do much aside from react to loud noises. Here we get to see a lot more. This could be where they all die horribly, but it doesn't mean they go into standby mode. They actually have conversations and walk around. They sing hymns and make fucking prayer circles. You know, girl stuff. This next scene is sponsored by Ireland, which provided actual rain for the following scene. The Hound is just destroying anyone who comes near him. His killing spree comes to an abrupt end when he sees one man charging him. But this is no ordinary man. This man is on fire.
I'm on fire!
Sandor freezes in terror, but B-Boy has his back. This is a nice little payoff for him not killing Bronn earlier. Bronn carries on fighting, and the Hound carries on with his panic attack. Rory McCann gives a great performance, and this almost justifies him not wearing a helmet, but you could just as easily had him wear one and then get it knocked off before this moment. But what the hell do I know? The Hound has put up with a lot of shit, but this is the last straw. Watching hundreds of men burn alive has finally gotten to him. He returns to the safety of the keep and starts to drain a bottle of wine. Tyrion chides him, and for the first time ever, we hear fear in the Hound's voice.
The Blackwater's on fire.
Joffrey thinks, I'll try yelling, that's a good trick. But this dog has had enough.
Fuck the king's guard. Fuck the city. Fuck the king.
And just like that, he's gone. Stannis' forces roll out the battering ram, and the design is great. I love how the boat built to carry it also triples as cover and support for the ram. And it just got pulled from the ocean, so it makes sense that the fire arrows aren't effective. This was director Neil Marshall's idea, and it's based off of historical battering ram designs, only boatified. Lancel shows up to collect Joffrey, and Joffrey wants to jump at the opportunity, but tries to maintain some dignity.
What did my mother say exactly? Did she have urgent business with me?
She did not say, Your Grace.
He doesn't get the easy out he's clearly begging for, so he runs with his tail tucked. The king is gone, the Hound is gone, and soon enough, the gate will be gone. Things are looking grim for the home team. But Tyrion steps up, volunteering himself to lead the attack.
I'll lead the attack! Men, form up! Men! Men! They say I am half a man. But what does that make the lot of you?
They all just saw the king hightail it out of there, so he doesn't bother appealing to their loyalty or honor. Instead, he lays out why having no king to lead them makes no real difference. It's made all the more hype as the Reigns of Castamere begins to play, and he ends it with a total mic drop.
Those are brave men knocking at our door. Let's go kill them!
And that's one of my favorite lines, even if I did write it myself.
I love how the battering ram can be heard during the entire speech, but it's completely drowned out once the men start to cheer. I also love comparing it to Stannis' speech from earlier in the episode.
Come in here and take the city!
Showing how easily Stannis can hype up his men with just a fraction of the effort makes Tyrion successfully inspiring his men feel that much more earned. Lancel has returned to Cersei to tell her that the battle is lost now that Joffrey has abandoned his troops. But that's only because he just missed the epic speech. Cersei insists on Joffrey staying safe in his room, even though he's kinda fucked if the city falls anyway. Lancel starts to raise his voice and Cersei slams her palm into his fresh arrow wound before storming out. The other ladies get a bit panicky after this, and Sansa hurries to calm them. She lies about Joffrey fighting bravely, and I love how, without thinking, she does exactly what Cersei mocked the idea of before.
And crow of how my courage inspired them, lifted their spirits.
Shay instructs her to go to her room and bar the door. Sansa locks it, but she sure as shit doesn't bar it. There's even bar holders built into the frame, so what gives? She's starting to lose her nerve, but is comforted by holding this here doll. This here doll first appeared in Season 1. Ned gave her the doll as a gift with a tag saying, "Hey kid, I'm really sorry for killing your direwolf."
I haven't played with dolls since I was 8.
Now look, Ned is a pretty great father, especially by Game of Thrones standards, but his neglect of Sansa is a subtle nuance that often goes unnoticed and unappreciated. Ned shares no small part in the blame for her betrothal to Joffrey and her resulting captivity. This doll being all she has left of him is both sweet and fittingly tragic. Suddenly the Hound reveals himself, lurking in the corner of her room covered in blood with a bottle of wine in his hand. Not creepy at all. He offers to take her home and she understandably declines, saying she'll be safe once Stannis wins. She can't bear to look at him and he gets frustrated, saying this.
Look at me. Stannis is a killer. The Lannisters are killers. Your father was a killer. Your brother is a killer. Your sons will be killers someday. The world is built by killers. So you better get used to looking at them.
And yet, this self-proclaimed monster has gone out of his way to protect her a couple of times already. Seriously, Sandor, you just offered her a free ride home with no guarantee of anything in return. How do you plan on smuggling her north with all that copium on you? Sansa detects the Hound shit as well.
You won't hurt me.
The Hound concurs.
No, little bird, I won't hurt you.
He exits the room and she stays behind, still clinging to her doll. For now, she remains a little bird too terrified to leave her cage, even with the door wide open. Tyrion and his troops sneak through the mudgate, and he gets the first kill of the match.
First strike.
They charge the Wait a minute, what's that thing on his head? Holy shit, I think it's a helmet. They manage to clear the beach, flip the boat, and burn the battering ram. The men cheer for the half-man, and it feels great to see Tyrion finally get some acknowledgement. It looks like the battle is finally...
Oh, fuck me.
Amidst the ensuing chaos, Sir Mandon Moore, a member of the Kingsguard, attempts to assassinate Tyrion, but Mandon whiffs it and gets summarily punished by Podrick, who has just been promoted to Godric for saving our boy Tyrion, who has just been slashed across the face. But don't worry, he's just a little grazed and confused. My guess at this point was that Cersei was behind this, but we get confirmation in Season 3 that it was Joffrey.
He hates me because I'm the only one who tells him what he really is.
Oh, I don't know, Tyrion. I could think of at least 4 other reasons. But yes, Joffrey is madly insecure in his kingly status, and his uncle is the only character at court who has blatantly and repeatedly defied him. The first time watching, the sequence does a great job at making the audience feel like the battle could actually be lost. Throughout the episode, more and more characters start to treat Stannis' victory like a foregone conclusion, which is nothing new to sieges in film. It's always best to make the audience wonder if your characters are going to make it, and it helps if your heroes are having similar concerns. But these aren't the heroes, these are the Lannisters. This is the faction that killed the POV of the last season in Le Big Dramatic Twist. This sick bastard has proven he is more than capable of killing off beloved characters, and the anxiety that puts in a first-time viewer is amazing.
What is he? No!
This final scene is no exception. A frightened Cersei comforts a frightened Tommen. She uncorks Chekhov's poison and... We get flashes of the battle as Tyrion begins to lose consciousness. Out of nowhere, an unknown force of cavalry joins the fray and begins cutting through Stannis' forces. We see Loras Tyrell wearing Renly's armor as he leads the charge. Cersei prepares to tell her son one last bedtime story. I would not put it past George to pull some Shakespeare shit, where she kills him right before realizing they've been saved, but thankfully, before Cersei or George get the chance, the battle
is over.
Yeah, what he said.
We have won.
This episode is one of the absolute best in the entire series, and my personal favorite. And yeah, it's mostly because of Tyrion. He's my favorite character from the show, and Season 2 is inarguably his season. Watching the little man make all the right moves despite everyone preying on his downfall is just so much fun to watch. Blackwater is the culmination of not just everything Season 2 has set up, but everything Season 1 has set up as well.
You will serve as Hand of the King in my stead.
One of the many reasons this show was so satisfying to watch was because the payoffs would basically stack on top of each other. As opposed to the and then storytelling of later seasons, the earlier seasons would always follow up big dramatic payoffs with logical consequences that would in turn fuel the developing plot. Despite the Lannisters staying in power, the Battle of Blackwater Bay still marks a major change in the status quo. Tyrion gets replaced by his father as Hand, House Tyrell is here to stay and to become a major player at court, and this defeat still haunts Stannis for the rest of the series.
How many fighting men remain loyal to you?
4,000.
And how many ships do you have? The ones still afloat, Sir Davos, not at the bottom of Blackwater Bay.
32.
This is arguably where he was removed as a contender for the throne, seeing as how he never reaches this strength again. As for Tyrion, his shenanigans with the wildfire end up saving the city. Even if he doesn't get the credit he's due, we know how much work he did to make this possible, and the little recognition he does get is still super cathartic. This episode is just classic Game of Thrones.
Winter is coming.
So many moments, even tiny, seemingly insignificant ones, get great payoffs in the episodes to come. Varys alluding to when he was cut, Little Tommen sitting on the throne, Lancel being severely injured, the silent reminder that Dantos is a character. Hell, even the axe that Pod hands Tyrion shows up 15 episodes later. Halfway through Season 4, while Tyrion awaits his trial, Pod's life comes under threat, so Tyrion has him leave the capital with Brienne. But before he does...
Compliments of Lord Tyrion. His axe from the Blackwater.
exactly what I wanted.
What a wholesome payoff for something I didn't even realize was being set up. The brilliance of the world and the characters is on full display here, despite the uniquely limited scope of the episode. The wildfire explosion is just one of many amazing payoffs that this show effortlessly delivered back when it was firing on all cylinders. Before episodes devolved into back-to-back bullshit, they really were back-to-back bangers. And I hope videos like this can remind people why.